Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou te whānau. Welcome back to another special edition of Big Hairy News. Now, I thought I'd jump in a couple of minutes early because then as soon as Craig dials in, we will bring him in straight away and have a bit of a chat. So what I thought I'd do is give you a heads up on one thing, not to look to capitalize, wrong word, capitalism is what I'm looking for, you on the very first second, but when I get off air now live, I'm going to be making an order for our merch, the order that needs to go through today. So just a heads up that if you are wanting to get anything, in particular the Women's Refuge, because Women's Refuge are the ones that we need to order, those shirts will be getting ordered in the next 60 minutes. Remembering any hoodie that's sold gets one safe night for Women's Refuge. Any t-shirt that gets sold is half a safe night. Just wanted to bring that up to you now because I will literally be wrapping up this podcast or this live stream with Mr. Renney and then be putting the order into our supplier of tops. So if you want to get something on today's order, bhnshop.nz. Anywho, that's not why we're here. I know that's not why we're here. Why are we here? Well, we're here for all sorts of things, aren't we? We're here for this, I think this is what we're here for. We're here for Nicola Willis's and her no BS budget. Yeah, what are we thinking, people? I've already seen people say in the chat say, oh, I'm not comfortable. Not comfortable. Yeah, I can understand why. There will be people right now, One News right now will be loading up, ready to push to be revealed. Yep, ready to push go on a whole bunch of articles that have already been written. So the lockup features, oh, John Campbell going up against us. Lockup, just so you know, I'm sure most of you are aware, is literally people in the ballroom or the meeting room at Parliament, and they've been there for, I think, 3 hours. 3 or 4 hours, maybe 4 hours, 10 a.m. And they're writing their articles and they're doing recordings as well. So the news groups, like One News, they will be pulling aside people like Craig in the lockup, getting their commentary and then hovering their finger over the go button for 2 p.m. So they record them. Yeah, that's a good idea. Stay positive. We'll do Parliament TV as well. Obviously, we're not going to be taking all of Nicola's comments. But yeah, maybe we can have this going in the background. Parliament on demand. Parliament video. And I'll turn the volume down in case there's volume to it. Oh, are we live? Oh.
At a glance, 2025. The Fiscal Strategy Report 2025. The Child Poverty Report 2025. The Summary of Initiatives 2025, the Budget, Economic and Fiscal Update 2025,
so we're going.
And the estimates of appropriations for the Government of New Zealand for the year ending 30 June 2026.
Those papers are published under the authority of the House.
Did you hear the story about RNZ? Court injunction to stop them punishing some leaked information? Apparently after the budget comes out, they're allowed to then publish it. God, don't these guys know how to put on a show? What's all this dead air? Come on. Oh, shaky, shaky. Shaky, shaky, shaky of the hand. Oh, Chris is such a gentleman, isn't he? Oh, this is the hand. Oh, shaky, shaky. Shaky of the hand. Will she shake Chloe's hand? High five, fist bump. Christopher Hipkins. Oh, there you go. Shaky, shaky. Have they got a little blue ribbon on them? Is that branding on the budget? Should we really be having branding on the budget? Ooh, shakes. Yep, Emily, that's what's going on. Let's put this here. Maybe we can do, Windows has this thing now, don't they, where you put it up into the top. You can do like a half screen like that. There we go. Maybe we can do that. And maybe we can open up, boom, that there. Look at that. Just like a freaking bought one. Okay, so we go back to latest or top stories because they'll have details already, I'm thinking. Although stuff might be better.
2025-26 Estimates Bill, Introduction.
The Appropriations 25-26 Estimate Bill is set down for first reading immediately. The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Appropriation 2025-2026 Estimates Bill be now read a first time.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no.
Oh.
The ayes have it. The party vote is called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
According to stuff.co.nz,
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
12.8 billion saved on pay equity. 12.8 billion. Shit. How? So that's going to plug the hole. 12.8 billion.
The ayes are 68. The noes are 49. The motion is agreed.
Appropriation 2025-26 Estimates Bill, first reading.
A budget 2025. Finance Minister Nicola Willis has just laid down her second budget, revealing the government will save more than, well, let's call it 13 billion over 4 years through its pay equity changes.
I move that the Appropriation 2025-26
So that means this budget is being put through in part off the backs of low-paid women to the tune of $13 billion. My goodness. The documents which set out the government's spending intentions for the next 4 years were released as it looks to reduce debt, increase infrastructure, investment and pay, pardon me, for core services such as health. There we go. It's better, isn't it? Look at that. It's almost like we've done this before.
It is an honour to announce this year's budget. This is a responsible budget to secure New Zealand's future.
Here.
It supports the economic recovery now underway. It also takes a longer-term view, with initiatives to boost future investment, savings and growth. It continues this government's investment in health, in education and law and order. And in a challenging global environment, it provides funding to boost New Zealand's defence capability. With an expenditure track that reduces government spending as a share of the economy, returns the government's books to balance and bends the debt curve down from going up to going down. The economic outlook presented alongside this budget is a bright one. After a tough few years, growth, jobs and wages are set to rise. The government is not promising that today's budget will solve all New Zealanders' problems, but we do promise that the decisions we are taking now will set our country up for a better future. Mr. Speaker, the creation and delivery of an annual budget is at the heart of strong and stable government, and this budget is a team effort. I want to acknowledge and thank the Associate Ministers of Finance, David Seymour, Shane Jones and Chris Bishop, for their ideas and their advice. They were heavily involved in putting this budget together, as was the Prime Minister.
So you can lay the blame on them as well.
And wise counsel was invaluable. Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in recent years, New Zealanders have battled through an extended period of high inflation, high interest rates and low growth.
Message
And we
Craig.
know that
Find out what's going
times
on.
remain tough for many Kiwis. The good news today is that with strong economic and fiscal management, our recovery is underway. The recovery is being supported by lower interest rates and strong export performance. And over the next few years, the government's new investment boost policy, which I will come to shortly, will have a positive impact on growth. Recent tariff announcements have created uncertainty and volatility around the world. And for a small trading nation like New Zealand, the global situation is concerning. It doesn't threaten the recovery, but it does threaten the pace of the recovery. The Treasury has pegged its forecasts back and downside risks remain. Despite this, budget forecasts show economic growth picking up to healthy levels once again. Real GDP growth is expected to accelerate to 2.9% in the next fiscal year and 3% in the year after. Growth matters. It means more jobs, higher incomes and opportunities for families to get ahead. And over the forecast period, wages are expected to grow faster than inflation, and at the end of that period, there are expected to be 240,000 more people in jobs.
What's happening in the chat, people?
Mr. Speaker, the government's books have taken a hammering over the past 6 years or so. Spending has risen sharply, so has government debt. The budget deficit left by the previous government is structural. It is not simply due to the state of the economy. In other words, the last government was living beyond its means, loading up the credit card to pay for things New Zealand couldn't afford. And this did real damage.
So Craig will be
to our
3 or 4
economy,
minutes away. He's just finding
as
a quiet
massive
corner.
spike in the cost of
So
living led to
we'll
high
just
interest
keep hanging out
rates
till we see
and
him.
low growth.
I can see the
This
vibe
government
of what's going on here, though.
taking responsibility for cleaning up the mess. And under our fiscal management, government debt will stabilise, then start to come down. And our control of spending creates room for monetary policy to respond with lower interest rates.
RNZ reporting
There is no
coalition
doubt,
claws
Mr.
back
Speaker,
money from pay
that
equity
fiscal
Kiwi saver in
consolidation
budget.
is challenging. Some would do it with higher taxes. Well, that would burden New Zealand workers and businesses and scare away talent and investment.
Remember what Hooton said,
It would
there'll be more
put
tax in this
our
budget, we'll wait and
economic
see.
recovery at risk.
This is the headline they want, we'll see what the
This
reality
government is taking a different approach. We are getting the books in balance by controlling growth in government spending. The operating allowance for budget 2025 is $1.3 billion on average per annum. This is the lowest allowance in a decade, significantly down from the $2.4 billion allowance signalled in the budget policy statement in December.
Kiwi
That
saver
reduction of
contributions are
$1.1 billion
halved.
goes straight to the bottom line. The government's headline operating balance indicator, OBGAL-X, is $1.1 billion.
And people
each
earning over
year
180K
on
will
average
receive
than it
no-
otherwise would have been.
No government contributions.
And in
Kiwi
addition,
saver changes on the way.
Treasury estimates that the tighter budget package will see interest rates being 30 basis points lower than they otherwise would have been by the end of the forecast period. Importantly, that $1.3 billion allowance,
Income testing for Best Start.
on the one hand, it encompasses
Payments
$5
cut when a family
billion
earns more than
a year
$97,000.
on
$97,000.
and $1.7
That's not a lot of money for like
billion
a family living in
tax
an
reductions
urban area.
through investment
Let's say it was just $97. That's
other
actually
hand,
Best Start Child
contains
Payments scheme will
savings
also become
of
fully income tested
$5.3
in the same way
billion a
the
year.
second and third years are,
These
with
savings
payment cut off when a
are the
family earns
result
more
of
than
ongoing
$97,000.
efforts
Fuck.
by multiple
The average
ministries
wage at the moment is
I want
about
to acknowledge
$90,000 in New
today.
Zealand.
We take seriously our roles as custodians of taxpayer money. A significant portion of those savings come from changes to the pay equity regime. The changes were made to ensure future settlements stick to correcting pay discrepancies that arise from sex-based discrimination
they were made because you
and
needed
not
money.
for
Come
other
on.
reasons. Making those changes
and not for other reasons. So people out there who are saying it's about us needing money, no, you're wrong.
means the government can repurpose $2.7 billion a year on average towards budget priorities like health, like education and law and order. That $2.7 billion had been put aside in contingencies for what, under the previous regime, were expected to be very wide-ranging pay equity claims, increasingly divorced from the sex-based discrimination that pay equity...
we're not going to... we will listen to this, but Craig's on his way. In 2024, the average mean salary in New Zealand was approximately $101,000. So the average, the mean average salary, so not the middle, but the average of them all was 101,000. They're going to stop. They're going to cut. What was it? They were going to cut at 97,000 contributions for. Let's get it right. RNZ, wasn't it? Best Start Child payments. Fuck.
Under our new regime. And the government also anticipates there will be pay rises in female-dominated public sector workforces achieved through normal collective bargaining. Mr. Speaker, the government has also been able to find net savings by increasing funding for inland revenues compliance activities. Funding of $35 million a year is expected to result in $280 million of extra tax.
Tightening of benefits for unemployed young people, so they're going to make the money so far off vulnerable women and children, youth.
New Zealand First and expanded in Budget 2025. Further savings have been made by closing a number of tagged contingencies and from reviewing the value of money, of grants and funds across government. This is not austerity. In fact, it is what you do to avoid austerity. Because getting the books in shape ensures New Zealand has financial security and choices into the future. And as
Austerity, just so people know exactly, difficult economic conditions created by government measures to reduce public expenditure. How can this not be austerity?
Law and order and rebuilding our defence force. Budget forecasts show that core Crown expenses are expected to remain steady, then decline as a percentage of GDP, reaching 30.9% by 28-29. The Obergalex deficit is expected to widen in the near term, then gradually improve after next year, returning to a surplus of $200 million by the end of the forecast period. At that point, members...
the budget puts handbrakes on annual growth in education spending as past splurges. Splurges on school buildings run out in the next few years. A handbrake on annual growth in education. What does that mean?
Net core
Need to find out more about
debt is
that.
expected to peak at 46% of GDP, slightly lower than forecast at the half-year update, before then beginning to decline. As these forecasts show, Mr. Speaker, the government is taking a deliberate, medium-term approach to fiscal consolidation. I am aware there are alternative approaches. Some say we should keep borrowing forever, whack it on the credit card and hope for the best. Well, that would be the height of irresponsibility. It would put the financial security of New Zealand at risk. And we owe better to our kids. And to my own kids, sitting in the gallery today, I want to say that I know Mum's been busy lately, and I'm sorry I missed your show last night, Hatter. But your future, and the future of the next generation of New Zealanders, has been very much on my mind as we've put this budget together. This budget will be good for you and for all our kids.
I'm just having a look around to see if I can see any live streams from outside government. If anyone's got any links,
Mr. Speaker, New Zealand's productivity
put them in the
challenges
chat.
are well
Put them in the chat
understood.
if you know of a link to a
Study
TikTok or a Twitter or
after study
Instagram.
has identified that a low level of capital investment per worker compared to other countries. To raise productivity, to lift incomes and drive long-term economic growth, New Zealand needs our businesses, big and small, to invest in machinery and tools and equipment, technology, vehicles, industrial buildings and other capital assets. Investment Boost is a new tax incentive that will increase capital investment in New Zealand. An Investment Boost allows a business to immediately deduct 20% of the cost of a new asset from its taxable income on top of depreciation. This means a much lower tax bill in the year of purchase. And the remaining book value is depreciated at normal rates. Since a dollar now is more valuable than a future dollar, the cash flow from investments is more attractive.
Wonder as well as there's the one here, businesses get a break. The flagship policy, thanks to RNZ, for the budget will create a new rule allowing businesses to write off 20% of the value of new assets like machinery, tools, equipment from their tax bill in addition to regular depreciation. The government forecast this could, by encouraging investment, boost GDP by 1% and wages by 1.5% over the next 2 decades. Wages by 1.5% over the next 2 decades. You always have that you'd be. So what? I can earn $1,000 a week today, and in 20 years, 1,001 wouldn't even be that, would it? 1.5% of 1,000. If inflation sticks around 2%, which is pretty much the same, they're saying this could help wages increase by 1.5% in the next 2 decades. What the?
5 years. Investment Boost starts today. And it applies to new assets purchased in New Zealand as well as assets imported from overseas. It includes commercial buildings, but it excludes land, residential buildings and assets already in use in New Zealand. There's no cap on the value of new investments all businesses, regardless of size, are eligible. It is estimated to cost an average of $1.7 billion per year in reduced revenue across.
Not to make it worse for your Cal, it says 2 decades. The next 2 decades.
Tradies, other Kiwi businesses, my message to you is this. Our government is helping you invest for your future and our country's future. Mr. Speaker, continuing the growth theme, Budget 2025 funds a number of initiatives that contribute to the government's Going for Growth agenda. As I announced earlier this week, the government has set aside $65 million to encourage foreign investment in New Zealand infrastructure by increasing the amount of tax-deductible debt foreign investors can use to fund it. The budget also supports the science and innovation reforms announced earlier this year. These include the move to transform Crown Research Institutes into 3 new public research organisations, establishing a dedicated gene technology regulator and creating a new agency.
So they're halving their contributions to KiwiSaver, and they're increasing the contributions of businesses to KiwiSaver from 3 to 4%. Interesting.
For the Elevate New Zealand Venture Fund to invest in the technology startup sector. Funding has also been set aside in contingency for potential Crown co-investment in new gas fields to ensure future supply. Mr. Speaker, while KiwiSaver has helped a lot of New Zealanders to save, many people's balances are modest. There would be few people, I think, who would reach 65, look at their KiwiSaver balance and think, I wish I'd saved less. The same goes for those
whilst you're actively enabling them to save less by halving your contributions. Okay.
Looking to buy their first home. Budget 2025 makes changes to encourage Kiwis to save more, while also making the scheme more fiscally sustainable. From 1 April 2026, The default rate of employee and employer contributions, which is currently 3%,
Will be 4.
will go to 3.5%.
Oh, 3.5. Well,
And from 1 April 2028, it will go to 4%.
So they're making businesses
Phasing
pay
this
more.
in over a 3-year period
And then pay
helps
less.
workers and employers plan ahead. The government recognises that, over time, employer contributions may effectively form part of the wage negotiation process. Employees will be able to opt down to the current 3% rate and still be matched by...
Here's something as well. Here you go. Coming for the beneficiaries. Parents to support unemployed 18 and 19-year-olds under new benefit rules from July 2027. Single unemployed 18 and 19-year-olds who are not in study or work will no longer automatically qualify for job seeker support or the emergency benefit. A new parental assistance test will be introduced, meaning their parents may be expected to support them instead. Social Development Minister Louise Upston said, with this announcement, we are clearly stating that 18 and 19-year-olds who don't study or work and can't support themselves financially should be supported by their parents or guardians, not the taxpayers. That is such horseshit.
More young people to adopt a savings habit and help them build...
And the reason it's horseshit is they're saying now you've got to be 20 to be an adult.
Members may recall that the
So that's what they're saying.
KiwiSaver design
You've got to be 20 to be considered an adult by the system they're setting up.
subsidies
Fascinating.
unaffordable. Most have since been wound back, and the scheme has continued to flourish. Apart from the government contribution, which is expected to cost an average of $1.2 billion a year over the forecast period. I'm advised that the government contribution is unlikely to be increasing the amount New Zealanders save. To ensure that KiwiSaver's costs to the taxpayer remain sustainable, this annual government contribution will be halved to 25 cents for each dollar a member contributes each year, up to a maximum government contribution of just over $260 a year. Members with an income of more than $180,000 will no longer receive any government contribution. These changes to the government contribution will apply from 1 July 2025. They do not affect the current year's government contribution, which will be paid out in July and August this year. Putting all these changes together, the KiwiSaver balances of employees contributing at the new default rate will grow faster than they do now, providing a larger balance at age 65 or when people come to buy their first home, building the financial security of New Zealanders.
This thing in the Best Start. April next year, the Best Start Child Payment Scheme will also become fully income tested in the same way the second and third years are. This is the thing that I'm coming back to. Payments cut off when a family earns more than $97,000. The average wage in New Zealand at the moment, average wage is $101,000. So that it's very clear. Which one was it? Was it that one? It says when a family earns, so if two people are on minimum wage, mum and a dad are on minimum wage, right? Basically, that means no Best Start for you because minimum wage gets you to about 50K.
Savings from changes to the government contribution, which total $2.5 billion over the forecast period, are being used to fund other budget priorities, including health, education and law and order. Mr. Speaker, a number of Budget 2025 initiatives deliver targeted cost of living support. These include fiscally neutral changes to working for families to better target it at low and middle income families who need the support most.
Like with
From
Best
1
Start.
April next year, the government will raise the family income threshold for working for families to $44,900 a year and increase the abatement rate slightly to 27.5%. As a result, families with incomes just above the new threshold will get an extra $23 per fortnight from working for families.
Per fortnight.
With this additional
Again,
support reducing
National Party per
gradually as
fortnight.
family income rises.
$12 a week.
In
love.
all, an estimated 142,000 families with children will receive $14 more per fortnight on average. And the vast majority of these families will have incomes below $100,000.
Doing well, sir. How you doing?
This will
it's been a day.
It's been a day.
Already?
Turn your phone sideways. We'll get you in portrait, and then you'll look like you're a TV dude. Look at that. Ms. Willis is obviously currently delivering her budget.
Yes.
We've been looking through some of the news headlines, but the reason we've got you on, and if you're watching us live streaming right now, now would be the time to put on your socials. Come here, Craig. He will deliver the truth for you. Right, do it right now. Link, copy, send. All my friends, come see Craig. There's a lot of people watching, actually. Yeah, I'm happy to follow your lead. I mean, obviously, Nicola Willis is just going to go through all the stuff we're about to talk about. So should we maybe just put her into the background and us have a chat about what you found? That probably makes the most sense, eh?
Yeah, I mean, there's a range of changes here, and we need to sort of take them apart slightly. There are a number which are quite surprising and that haven't been advertised, and some that have been. Amongst the numbers that were widely advertised are changes to the pay equity regime.
12.8 billion or something?
$12.8 billion.
Holy shit. So hang on. So basically the same as what they gave out in tax cuts. Pretty much, pretty close.
Absolutely. And sort of, so you've got $12.8 billion of money that they've clawed back on that basis. The challenge is that's actually only one part. There are then a further around two and a bit billion dollars of cuts each year on top of that as well. Right. So we're seeing billions taken away from low-income earners. We're seeing the removal of job seeker support for 18 and 19-year-olds.
We saw that. Hang on, let's just pause on that because we read that as well. Is basically they're now saying you're not an adult till you're 20 when it comes to us giving you money.
There will be a new parental test and parental support test. Now, the Treasury, they were asked the question in the lockup, what will the test be?
Yep.
And the answer was, we don't know. We haven't made that decision yet.
So I fucking don't know.
But even despite all of that, if I compare the Budget, Economic and Fiscal Update in 2024, which is the last budget, this one here, and I compare it to this new shiny budget, this one here, there are 21,000 more people on job seekers this year alone.
Yeah.
Real wage growth is less than was forecast to be last year. And that includes the 21,000 figure will include having taken some 18 and 19-year-olds out of job seekers support.
Gotcha. So they'll have removed some and it's still bigger, which means the number of people who it's actually impacting are bigger than that's even indicating.
Absolutely. We're looking at a range of cuts to a range of areas. So Vote Māori Development, for example, sees big cuts. Vote Pacific Island Affairs sees big cuts. We see big increases to Vote Defence, and we see big increases to Vote Corrections. So we're going to spend more money on missiles and more money on locking people up. And that money essentially comes straight from low-income, female-dominated workforces who are paying the bill for that. And this is not as if...
And the youth who are now those 18 and 9. So they're taking them from vulnerable women and the youth. And as I look at this, and I won't hijack what you want to talk about first, but and young families, lowering the threshold for who's going to get Best Start, all these groups that are they're clawing back money from, so they can look after the top 10%, the landlords, and defence. Why the fuck is New Zealand following America with like, thank you for your service? We're unstrategic. We don't need it like as much as they're putting into it today.
Yep, and 2 days ago, the government made a decision to remove the potential digital services tax. What that did was it taxed big multinational companies like Google, like Facebook, and the revenues across the next 4 years were forecast to be just short of $500 million. So that represents a $500 million tax cut for those companies. We're halving the Crown's contribution to people's KiwiSaver.
Yeah, I saw that. But upping it to the businesses.
And we are requiring businesses and people to put on the default schemes 4% more in. But there is 1% more in each. But there is a loophole inside that request, which is that if you want to, you can still go back to 3%. And if you go back to 3%, your employer goes back to 3%. So what that means is every employer will be pressurizing low-income, workforces to keep their KiwiSaver at 3% so that they don't have to pay that level of contribution.
Gotcha.
There's a wide range of so things like, for example, the government's talking a lot about paying more money for learning support in schools, which is great. We should be spending more money on lower in schools, but that money comes straight from cutting other bits of the education budget. The Kahu Ako program is going to be losing around $350 million in order to pay for around $200 million of new learning support. So the cut is bigger than the support.
Right. And ironic. So Kia ora Kayako, what was that providing money for in particular?
I was providing clusters of schools to become specialists, to become much better at their work, particularly in areas where there was really hard kids, really difficult kids to work with, or really difficult areas to work with other than children. We're giving $15 million more to families who want to send their children to private schools.
Of course we are.
And when asked the question, why are we doing that? David Seymour in the lockup said, well, you'd be surprised who sends their children to private schools. We think there are a range of families who might want to take that benefit. I think there are a range of families who want to see their local school being as good as it can be rather than being forced to send their kids to private school.
So this is an exact model of what Gary Payenda always talks to us about when they're giving $50 million to do surgeries. If they put that $50 million into the public health sector, it would get those surgeries done, and it would support the public health sector. If they put that, did you say 15 billion or 15 million?
15 million.
Oh,
15 million.
Yeah, of course, 15. Sorry. So, but I mean, like that's actually a small change. It sounds big change to us, but a small change. But if they put that 15 million to the public, it would probably enable the quality to rise or resources to rise to compete with the privates.
Or certainly you could be delivering a better outcome for a small group of children who have very specific needs in a particular place, because learning support needs are real and we're not delivering them. To give you some idea of the kind of like chump change numbers that we're dealing with, there was a PR and a big announcement about increasing the amount of support for pensioners who will be getting rates relief. The amount of benefit that is actually happening is approximately 28 cents a week.
Oh. It's this is why we got to talk about these things, Craig. It's like fucking Thomas Coughlin from ZB the other day talking about this is a pay cut for nurses. It's like, well, let's look at that. It's people over $120,000 from the Greens budget, and it's $5 a week. Yeah. So rather than 2,300, you're now getting 2,295. So these contexts have to be there. We have to know what more or less means in a tangible way as well.
Well, certainly those nurses and many other low-income female-dominated workforce in the public sector will now have $12.8 billion less in their back pockets, plus some more, because that money has come straight out of their settlements. So, long story short, this is a budget that essentially is propped up by those low-income workers and those low-income workforces. ECE funding. So can you remember the last budget? There was big crowing about the Family Boost program. Lots of families would benefit from the increased Family Boost payments that were being delivered by this government. Core ECE funding is rising by 0.5%, which means ECE funding is being cut in real terms this year.
Yeah, because of inflation. Yeah, I want to ask you something specifically about that, though, right? So the savings and pay equity changes and Best Start. From April next year, the Best Start child payment scheme will also become fully income tested in the same way the second and third years are. This is the thing I want to ask you about. With payments cut off when a family earns more than $97,000, a family earns more. I just did some back of the envelope things, and is it right that our average salary in New Zealand at the moment is about 100K? I googled it, and that's what it said.
It's a bit less than that, and the median income is a bit less than that.
Because what I'm basically saying is this doesn't feel like it's very far away from the average salary.
Well, the average family salary, average household salary would be around 100,000.
Yeah.
And so this applies to the household.
So
Yeah.
two parents, both of them in minimum wage work full time, would be earning around that $97,000, give
Correct.
or take, because it's close to 50.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is, you two minimum wage full time workers, we are now cutting you off from Best Start child payment scheme because the payments cut when a family earns more than $97,000.
Right.
So basically, a minimum wage household is now not going to get Best Start.
Yeah, and around, by my calculations, around 60,000 families will be worse off as a consequence of this package, because they lose Best Start, they lose working for families, because the working for families is being abated, so the amount that you can get for every dollar earned more quickly.
Yeah.
So as people's wages go up, they will lose their income on that side. So there are some very small changes for some groups, but for most people, it either makes no difference, or they're worse off, or the public services that they're using will be worse off.
I'm going to go through the list of stuff on ZB for budget 2025. Happy for you to point to any of them. I'll start in the bottom going up, because the bottom one jumps out at me. More than $30 million is being devoted to boot camps for recidivist youth. Any words
And
around
all the
that?
evidence that we have to date tells us that the original program did not work. In fact, all of the people on the scheme, with the exception of one, reoffended.
Yeah. Roads, schools and hospitals going to get a $2.7 billion boost. That looks like a great headline. Is there anything we need to know about it?
Yeah, so essentially that's all of the capital being invested in all of the schools, all of the hospitals and all of the roads. The majority of that is going into roads, not going into any schools or hospitals. And in fact, overall net capital investment falls from last year.
Can we contextualize that a bit? Because obviously 2.7 billion is a number that none of us can comprehend when you talk about money in your hand.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about 3 billion for ferries, how much is 2 billion going to get? Like, we're in Dunedin, like, hospital's important to us. It's important to everyone. But what does that mean?
Dunedin Hospital is probably going to end up costing about $2.5 billion.
Right. So they're saying they're spending on roads, schools and hospitals about what the budget is for one hospital.
I think they're saying there's more support for them, which is about the same size as the hospital. But if you look at the overall the spending on physical infrastructure, overall it's much less than was historically being expensed even a couple of years ago in terms of capital expenditure.
Right. So this is an announcement that 2.7 billion is on top of what they're already spending, not some total. Gotcha.
Yes, but it's not. But again, it's not huge amounts of money. It's, in fact, we spend more money on capital every year because of the cost of living, because new stuff needs fixing.
Yep. Student loans going to start paying more. What are we hearing there? Is it interest or is it just more payments?
So the threshold of our student loans will remain the same. So as people's incomes grow,
isn't it? It's about 14,000 at the moment.
And as a consequence, that because the threshold remains the same, as people's incomes go up, they'll be paying more back. So they will pay more back on their. That will be an extra sort of impost on their salary that wouldn't have occurred if they hadn't. If they'd gone up with inflation, for example, which is the claim they made previously.
Can we contextualize that? I don't have a problem with, in theory, people paying off their student loans but quicker. But if it's going to be like an increase of 10%, which makes obviously their take-home pay unmanageable, do we know what the numbers are?
We don't off the top of our heads, but what we do know is that right now, many people are struggling just with the cost of living. This is another cost that they're having to face at the same time, as rents are rising, rates are rising, a whole range of other costs are rising, and they have absolutely no ability to influence it because it's an automatic payment that just comes straight out of their salary.
Yep. So even if it was $5-10 a week, it's going to impact some people because
Absolutely.
we already know that from $5 I was going to say prescriptions. Some people have stopped getting their medicine because they can't afford a $5 prescription. So if it goes up by $5, it's going to be real world impacting.
Well, if you didn't have it to begin with, you have it even less now.
Yeah. Tax incentive for businesses, 6.6 billion.
Yeah. So the tax incentive essentially is an incentive to firms to invest in capital plant. It offers 20% immediate write-off for large capital items. That's we should be encouraging investment in new plants and equipment in New Zealand. The challenge is getting the right equipment and getting the right staff. This is a fairly blunt instrument. It just simply puts more money in the banks of large firms, of large businesses who have been making the investment anyway. And for much of the service sector, and 70% of our economy is the service sector, it makes very little difference.
Does this also mean, if it's a tax incentive for business, does that therefore mean it's 6.6 billion out of our coffers, like out of the country's coffers? Because if it's going to then stay in the pockets of the businesses, in general, I like supporting businesses, but in reality, does this therefore mean they are cutting their revenue again by $6.6 billion by doing this?
In theory, so the argument the Treasury will be running is that this will grow the economy faster. And as a consequence, there'll be some return because there'll be more tax because of a faster economy, more productive economy. The challenge is it's often very difficult in the short run to get much growth out of that, because it takes a really long time to get new plant, it takes a really long time to train new workers, and it takes a really long time to get the productivity out of the other side.
And what you've just said as well, whilst we accept that it's true, but it's still a theory. They're saying it's going to. It may not.
Correct.
But what we do know is, not today literally, but today they've announced $6.6 billion less in the coffers.
If firms were being tax efficient to begin with, then they're still being tax efficient. They're just being tax efficient with a larger profit.
Yeah, right. 142,000 families. I'm sorry, I'm not going to play Nationals game here. 142,000 families will get an extra $7 a week under Working for Families.
And that's great. The question is $7 the same as a cost of living increase?
Right.
Because actually $7 a week, right, works out at $350 a year.
Yeah.
Right. So that's actually tiny.
I think we've talked about the unemployed 18, 19-year-olds. It is fair. I used to, before the age of drinking came down to 18, when it was at 20, I used to talk about there just needs to be consistency. The worst one is universities saying you're not an adult till you're 25. Like when it comes to getting your student allowance, you're not. So it needs to be consistent. And what they seem to be saying now is you're not an adult when it comes to getting money from WINS until you're 20. Yet you can drink at 18, you can sex at 16, you can go to war at 18. At university, we're not going to give you an allowance till you're 25, independent from your parents. It just seems to be another way they're going to clip the ticket and save money. Do we know? Is there a projection of what this will also save them by now going to the 18-year-olds? Mummy and daddy can look after you.
Yeah, so there's a projection which is in the budget documents, which in the summary of initiatives, I believe is $161 million across the forecast period. So that's basically $40 million a year, straight out of the pockets of 18 and 19-year-olds, and into basically into the pockets of the Crown, because they're the ones making that saving. There it is, $163.7 million across the forecast period.
I'm just tallying up here. 18 and 19-year-olds, young families, vulnerable. Okay, these are the people that we're getting our cuts out from. Vulnerable women, that is, vulnerable women. Yep, cool.
Yep. So we're taking the cuts from 18 to 19-year-olds. We're taking the cuts from people who are going to have to pay more for early childhood services. We're taking the cuts out of people who will be wanting to access health and education services that aren't properly invested in. We'll be taking the cuts out of those $3.2 billion of low-income workers, and the money goes to the defence industry. It goes to corrections, and basically it makes the budget balance. So this is a budget balanced on the back of those workers.
I think we've talked about the halving to KiwiSaver accounts. Is there anything else you want to add to that, or is there anything else you want to add that we've kind of not covered that you think is an important headline to mention?
Over the next few days, obviously, lots more will be coming out, and we'll uncover new and exciting things. But I think it's fair to say that beyond those things that have already been announced, there was actually vanishingly little in the budget. There's actually not a huge amount of new announcements. There was $200 million set aside for new gas exploration. Right. And there's millions of dollars for new capital investment, but there's absolutely not a new cent for anything to do with climate change.
Wow. Okay.
So there's money to support, say, $15.7 million to support subsidies for independent schools. We are spending, but we're taking money away from teenagers. We're spending $85 million to set up a new entity called Invest New Zealand to encourage people to invest in New Zealand. But we're spending $15 million on food banks.
Yeah, good grief.
We're spending $24 million or $6 million a year to support people with aged care. Yeah. But we're spending $60 million to support outdated police payroll systems.
So it's a give with one hand, take with the other all the way through.
Absolutely. It's robbing Paula to pay Peter. We are quite literally going to do that. And I mean, in terms of the tertiary education, again, there were investments in tertiary education, but we're nowhere near what's actually needed in terms of the development. And what isn't clear is whether or not they're going to do what they did last time round, which was increase fees by 6%. So the last budget, they increased tuition fees by 6%. There we go. I just discovered that new. So budget 25 proposes an annual maximum fee increase of 6% for 26. So 6% this year, 6% next year. So your tuition fees are going up by much more, by 3 times the rate of the cost of inflation.
Craig, there are people in the chat saying Chippy is on fire and on point in the chat, but I think what we'll do is we'll leave the overall commentary to tonight, because for people who are watching right now, or if you're watching this on demand after we've come off the live stream, Craig will be back with us tonight. Barbara Edmonds from Labour will be with us tonight. And rather than kind of prolonging this, which we're just really doing headlines, what we might do is wrap it up now, and we'll feature the responses from all the leaders in tonight's show with Craig and Barbara. So, Craig, what do you want to leave us with? What do we need to know from this, from today's budget to take away?
2 things. There's still no plan. There's still no plan for growth, for jobs, for incomes, to make sure people are actually better off. Right? There's lots of money sloshing around for lots of other priorities, but not to actually look after people, not to make sure people have income security.
Yeah.
Right? And 2, this budget is almost entirely illusory. It wouldn't exist unless that $12.8 billion of pay equity and a further $8 billion of cuts hadn't been delivered.
Gotcha.
Without that, this would be a budget that would be completely in disarray. And we've got a government downstairs crowing about delivering on its economic targets. Those economic targets it can only hit because it's really tackled low-income female workforces to deliver them. Yeah.
And again, they've been able to potentially hit their targets off the backs of 18, 19-year-old young families and vulnerable women. I mean, like we used to say, what is the what is Luxon going to leave behind? And at that stage, it was like, friend of big tobacco and fighting against cancer screening. It's like, my dude, this budget is going to be off the backs of 18, 19-year-olds, young families and vulnerable women. Here's a weird question just to wrap up. Could it have been a lot worse?
It could have been worse. There was loose talk at times about various other proposed changes. I'm an economist. I can always make things worse. But in terms of the overall budget, the winners or the losers of the budget are exactly the people that we set up the state to support.
Yeah.
And the winners are people who don't need our support. And so, budgets are about choices and values. Yeah. And, we're choosing the wrong people, and we're showing the government is showing the values that it has.
Yeah. All right, Craig, we'll leave it there. There's a good kind of clip, a good quick first look at it. I'm sure you're going to go to your library now and nerd out for the next few hours.
I'm delighted.
This is Christmas for you, isn't it?
Seriously, it's great fun. But in terms of we'll have lots more to say tonight and lots more reaction. But right now, at the risk of boiling the ocean down, there's enough in here for people to get really angry, and they should.
It's already been in the chat. People are leaving saying, I'm fuming. I saw that go past a few times. So we'll leave you to it, Craig.
Right.
I'm gonna. Ooh.
it will leave.
Oh, that's still the budget going on in the background. I was gonna play some outro music. Maybe I can't. I'll do it another way. And we'll catch you tonight just before 9 o'clock. Thanks for joining, and everyone in the chat's like, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Craig. So we appreciate you, and we will see you tonight at 9 o'clock. All good?
See you tonight.
All right. All the best. See you, Craig.